Everyone, Mike Vogel here for Break the Ice, joined as always by crack producer Zach Garrett, and happy to have as our guest this time around assistant coach skills Kenny McCudden, who's got a rich and varied history in the game and outside the game, and just one of the guys that makes the wheels on the bus go round and round all the time for this team. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you, folks.
I want to start with it's been just a little over 2 years since you've been here with Washington. I want to go back to just before you arrived here. So this would be the exit day at the end of the 22-23 season, which turned out to be the day that the Caps and Peter Laviolette agreed to part ways. And that happened on exit day, kind of unexpectedly. And that day I was talking to TJ Oshie, and I said, Oshie, what do you think? Talk to me about what do you think the next head coach of this team needs to have in his tool set? And he goes, I don't know about that. He goes, what I do know is that I feel like we need to have a dedicated skills coach here in Washington, not just for the younger guys who are coming up, but for older guys like myself who maybe don't have those things brushed up as quite as much as the kids who are coming up, who are getting that sort of tutelage all the time. And you're the guy who, for the last 4 decades, I mean, you're one of the pioneers of this sort of thing. So how did you
end up here?
Well, we'll get to that, but how did you sort of scratch the surface on this decades ago and find this little niche that at the time was a niche, just because of the way the game was played, and there was a paucity of even assistant coaches behind the benches, because we're talking about the 1980s here, when you sort of started this thing with Grant Mulvey, an academy where you were teaching kids from age 6, 5, 4, whatever, all the way up to pro hockey players.
That made it a little bit easier, Vogues, as far as going the transitional part of it, going from kids hockey to the IHL at that time, the International Hockey League with the Chicago Wolves, and Grant Mulvey was the president. So it made it a little bit easier that my partner with the hockey school, who's a brother of Paul Mulvey, an alum from the Capitals, but it made it a little bit easier in 1994, 1995 to transition into the pro game. But a lot of players weren't accepting, outside help back then. I mean, as a coach coming in and working on the skill set of your hands and your vision and your feet in the IHL, those guys were used to playing hockey and drinking a lot of beer. But you saw the junior player and you saw the college player at that time, a little bit of a change, looking for that little bit of extra help. And I kind of built off of that with the Chicago Wolves, and it became 16 years later.
But your background in the game started as a kid. And you and I are both from the Chicago area. I wasn't born there, but I consider myself from there. Those were where my formative years were. And we discovered that we're of similar age, and you and I both spent some years as a caddy at a kind of private country club there, rival clubs, if you will. So you had a background in sports, and I feel like we are of that era when we woke up, and in the summertime we went outside, and we didn't come back home until dinner time, and we just played sports all day long. How did your love of the game of hockey and the Blackhawks lead to you becoming essentially a stick boy? And then the assistant trainer for the Hawks for a number of years.
I was very, very fortunate. The Blackhawks, when Chicago Stadium was being used, whether it would be a Led Zeppelin concert or the Ice Capades or whatever, the Blackhawks practiced at the facility where I played as a kid. So I got inside the ropes, as they would say. I was one of those kids that was hungry to lug the bags in, lug the bags out, just so I can get a hockey stick, and that led on to 1,000 hockey sticks. But no, I just I wanted to be there as a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, I'd be able to help out the trainers. Back then, it was only 2 trainers, a medical trainer and an equipment manager. And they were very, very famous, Skip Thayer and Louis Varga.
Yep.
And They never won a Stanley Cup. Skip went with the Pittsburgh Penguins when he left the Blackhawks, but Louis never did. But they recognized this little guy that wanted to help out, and that experience probably lasted about 2 years because I was constantly seeing them at my facility where I was playing as a kid, as I mentioned before. And the next thing you know, you're down there at 15 or 16 years old down at Chicago Stadium, and they put me in the Blackhawk locker room. So you're looking at Tony Esposito all the way to Stan Mikita and Keith Magnuson, and my life kind of changed overnight.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of, Bob Pulford, I think, was coaching then. Eddie Johnston, Keith Magnuson came after him.
Orville Tessier.
Yeah, Orville Tessier. There was a rich history of hockey in Chicago, and I know that on the dad's trip a couple of years ago when your brother was on, he was talking about that 1971 Stanley Cup final with Montreal.
I brought that up, yeah.
And so you've got you've got this rich history in the game. Was it something that in the back of your head you were like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, or did it just sort of take that shape later on?
Well, when you when you grow up in Chicago, I mean, kids were wearing number 9 on their sweaters. They were wearing 21. They were wearing 35. I wanted to be a little different. I remember asking for a Boston Bruin jersey with a number 4 on it, and I got beat up for it. But no, they were bigger than life. Hull, Mikita, Esposito were bigger than life. I mean, they were equivalent to Walter Payton. They were equivalent to Michael Jordan. Rinks were starting to be built back then in the late 60s, mid-60s, early 70s because of those 3 players. When you have great teams like that and great athletes like that, ball fields are being built, basketball courts are being built, and so was hockey rinks. But no, I think once I was in that locker room, my life kind of turned around where I was like, do I want to be a trainer in the NHL? I'm here already. This is something else. And no university can teach you what you learn in a pro locker room. I'm glad my mother and father didn't know half this stuff that I was learning in that locker room. But no, I was accepted instantly. And don't forget, you're around ownership a lot. So you're around the Wirtz family. Yep. And they were terrific to be around. But, yeah, Bob Pulford was president and general manager during those years. And Pulley did not accept any nonsense. So, I mean, if you were going to be a young kid around that room, what you see, you keep to yourself. What you hear, you keep to yourself. And I ended up staying there for nearly 6 years. And then it was just time to move on. I changed the path in a way where I didn't want to go the trainer route. And then the hockey school started. The private lessons started. And that just grew into where I am today.
But that's got to, I mean, you were playing the game as well.
Yeah, as a kid
you played
growing up.
as a kid and all that, and played in high school. But at that point, you're mid-20s when you decide not to be a trainer, not to follow that route. How do you build a skills industry, a one-man skills industry from that point? And when you look back on it now, 4 decades later, what do you think about all those miles and all that work and all those early mornings and all those nights, days on the road?
Well, I tried to get into the golf business, and was kind of promised this and promised that, and I thought I was going to be in outside sales and with the Ram Golf Corporation, but they wanted to keep me inside for quite a few years, and I just didn't want to be trapped in an office. But I thought I might get into the golf business because I love the game of golf. But I don't take credit for my path in the beginning at all. I give the credit to Grant Mulvey. Grant Mulvey, who had already played 10 years with the Chicago Blackhawks. He was towards the end of his career finishing up with the New Jersey Devils, and he approached me at a Blackhawk game. I went as a guest, and I was sitting in the old-fashioned press box that was, I believe, in the west end of Chicago Stadium. And he approached me, and he says, I need a guy like you who's been brought up in the game of hockey here in Illinois. I could be the sizzle, he was saying. about himself as an NHL player.
Yeah.
But I need a guy like you because you've been through the trenches as a kid growing up at all the levels here in Chicago. And I think we can go out and teach coaches. I think we can go out and teach players. I said, for a summer clinic or a summer camp only? He says, no, all winter long. And I didn't think it was going to work. And it did work. It worked overnight. And honestly, we kind of went like this, Vogues, in a way where I remember we didn't accept any pay for our first year. And the reason why, we kind of just wanted to showcase what we can bring. And it worked. So what we were doing was we were going to organizations. The president or the board members were allowing us to go on the ice to teach the coaches how to teach the game. And obviously we're working with the kids on the ice. And one organization led to the next and the next after that. And I think I was 27 years or 28 years at that, and 125,000 kids later.
Yeah, and that it wasn't when it was done. It wasn't just the Chicago area.
Correct.
And I think you nailed something. You were teaching coaches, not just kids.
That's correct.
And so that's that's as grassroots as you can get.
Yeah, we were lucky though too. I mean, he was not far from playing, and we built upon it right away because power skating was very, very big at that time. It was Laura Stam, who came out of New York, she was the queen of it all.
Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
Big name.
And she came in and met with us. We ran a program with her. And we ran a few other programs with her after that, but we realized we can do the exact same thing, but in our own city. No, we just pounded the pavement, as they would say, and we had a coaches clinic here with the Washington Capitals yesterday, and I told coaches that, and I really believed in this early in my career. Every time you step through that door, whether you're working with 6-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 16-year-olds, it's a privilege to get on out there. You've been chosen to be able to coach, and there's a reason why you've been chosen. Hopefully you're dedicated towards it. Hopefully you give everything to the kids and the families and the organization that you're working for, and that's why I loved it, because that's the way I looked at it, and I think you grow from it. And you grow the game from it. And I think I wanted to be a coach that wasn't just remembered for today. I wanted to be remembered for tomorrow.
That there's a lot there. When Grant took over they were the IHL,
Correct.
Chicago Wolves there in the early mid 90s. That was your entree to pro hockey.
No doubt.
But as a guy who kind of just grew this along with Grant, I mean, I guess if you ask Grant, he's had a ton of different coaches that he's played for over the years.
Sure.
And he probably has some philosophical trickle down from some of those guys. Where did your own personal coaching philosophy come from, and how did you build that?
That's a great, great question. I would say during those Blackhawk years, being able to see Keith Magnuson up close, he only coached a year. To see Bob Pulford manage a bench, because Bob Pulford was a solid coach coming over from the Los Angeles Kings to the Chicago Blackhawks, and he knew how to manage the bench. So I was on the bench for all these games, home games. And to see Eddie Johnston, who's still in Pittsburgh when we attend. I think he's 90 years old today. And EJ was loved by the players. And then you see a guy like Orville Tessier, who was very explosive coming out of junior hockey, and then from junior hockey to the American Hockey League and winning the Calder Championship. I think it was with New Brunswick back then. And he was a fiery Mike Keenan type of coach. And so you kind of take the best out of everybody that I'm mentioning there. And then you see great assistants too. I saw Bill White. I saw Cliff Coral. Some great names there. And if you take a piece from everybody and you kind of implement that into your style, you're going to get a decent coach, I believe.
And you're famous for coming up with drills and for having a book of drills that you call the Bible.
Yeah.
How many different drills would you say are in there, and are you still innovating in that way?
Oh, it's a really, really good question. I'm innovating more and more because I want to tap into how the game is changing. Like, for instance, I've been here for 2 years. I'm 13 games, whatever it is, into my third year with Washington. I haven't repeated too many drills in my short time here, and nor do I want to even next year. So I'm always evolving, trying to evolve with different personnel, what the expectations are from our coaching staff with the other assistants and Spencer Carberry. And you try to build around the player, around the team. And that's why I think I change up drills so much. Yeah, I started, so like for instance, the last 2 years, that big Bible that I have, I've never looked at it again. It gets filed, never to be seen again. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to get some good drills someday when I'm done with this game. But yeah, I've got milk crates and milk crates on the years, the players, my objectives, the teams. It's something that I'm kind of proud of in a way where it's something new and a challenge every single day to not only be different as a coach and the players recognize it, but I think we have to be different as a coaching staff going into different teams and a different approach day after day.
And your process is to watch the games from upstairs, yep, and sort of pick out guys who could use a little help at this, maybe wall play or taking pucks on their offside or their off wing.
Yeah.
How then do you approach that player and say, hey, I got something, or I want to spend some time with you, and how, I mean, your bedside manner, I guess, is what we're looking for here. And how do you, because, there is that sort of, you alluded to it a little earlier, that stigma of, well, I'm a pro player, I should know all this stuff already. Yeah. But like you say, the game is always evolving too, so you got to stay out in front of that curve.
Yeah, I think I've been on many different staffs before where I've been the coach that always gets along with the players, so it's an easy conversation about getting them in, but I'm also about the positives too. So I mean, it's not just players, folks, that are maybe struggling that have to go with a skill session in the morning. It might be a player that's getting a lot of points, and we're continuing to work on the things that are working well for that player. So they're going to go an awful lot in skills too. So it's not just pinpointing maybe a slight deficiency in a player. We're talking about tremendous positives with that player, and that player wants to keep things going all the time because it's working out for him. So, but no, it's easy, and I love that you said the bedside manner. I would say it is a bedside manner with me when it comes to a player and myself as far as a relationship, because I want to be that guy that starts off their day the right way, whether things are going well for them or whether it's not. I want to be that first guy that they start the day off, they're taping their stick, they're ready to, they're talking about certain drills with me, they can't wait to get on the ice. And I think the preparation in that 25 to 27 minutes with me in the morning gets them prepared for Spencer Carberry to drop the puck for practice.
And I mean, you alluded to the 125,000 kids that you've pushed through. I think everybody in the game knows who you are, and you're one of those guys that you are the 6 degrees of Kenny McCudden. You don't have to have 6. You're 1 degree away from pretty much everybody in this game, is the way I see it. When we go around, you're talking to scouts in the press box. You're talking to guys that you worked with, coached with, whatever.
Yes.
It's amazing that the
players make fun of me, by the way, just to let you know, in all the buildings that we go to, because I know all the Zamboni drivers. And the reason why I have a great relationship with the Zamboni drivers is you're going to get good ice cut for you. So the guys are always laughing that, for instance, if they're stretching and they have one last little turn to make and one last lap, I'm skating along the Zamboni driver and talking away to them, and they die laughing at that. So, yes, I enjoy talking to everybody in the game.
Well, let's talk a little bit about just some nuts and bolts with some guys. There's 3 guys that I noticed last season that I thought really benefited from your tutelage as the season wore on, and they're 3 very different players. And if you can just talk a little bit
Sure.
about each of them. One of them's no longer here. That's Alex Alexeyev, who unfortunately only played like 8 games last year because this team was so healthy. But you could see the dedication that Big Al had to stay out late every day, and to when we did see him a little bit late in the season, you could see the market improvement in a lot of aspects of his game. And then I would say the same thing for Brandon Duhaime, and you want to allude to, as you alluded to, guys who are putting up points. Alexei Protas.
Yeah.
Those 3 guys, I thought from day 1 to day 80, game 82, really showed market improvement.
When I'm done with this game, the players like Alexeyev will be very, very memorable for me, because that's a tough situation for an athlete to be in. Al never took a second off, and I shared that with the organization at the end of the year when it came to exit meetings. He never took a drill off, but to show up to the rink every day for touches before practice, and then you're skating him as an extra because he's not getting in the lineup, but that's all year long, month after month after month. All I can say is that I know a lot of outside people look at that and say, oh my gosh, that has to be humdrum. That's got to be tough on the coach, got to be tough on the player. Again, I think I'm the right coach to be picked for that situation, and I think the players recognize that, and a guy like Al and I had a terrific relationship, and I would expect to have him have 3, 4, 5 bad days, but he didn't have that. And the reason why, you're bringing something new all the time. You have dialogue with him. You're rooting for him because you're only a player or 2 away from him getting into the lineup. So, I've only had a handful of players like that in my life, but I will always remember those players because it's not an easy situation. Going to Brandon Duhaime, he just can't get enough of it. He wants touches all the time. And we're kind of pulling back on him a little bit here and there because he's the same way in the gym. So when you have that workload, it becomes too much. So days where I do want him in skills, he might be pulled out of it because the workload is too high in the gym with the combination. It's where it's at today. But I was reading an article not too long ago about Michael Jordan never wanting to be pulled from a game early because of rest of the next night or anything like that. He thought the opposite, but that's, again, Michael Jordan. But no, it's down to a science today. So the Brandon Duhaime relationship, he wants touches, he wants routine. If he doesn't get that, he feels out of sorts with it. But I love players like that because I have a job because of players like that.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Pro, the big guy. 30 tucks last year. And the big thing that Spencer Carberry wanted me to do with Pro was to get him off the yellow as quickly as possible with rims. And it's a rim, whether it's going into it or coming out of it, to keep his feet moving. With that size, with that length of the arms, the length of the stick, to be able to escape any kind of containment. That's what we worked on. And when Pro's playing his best hockey, you can't pin him, you can't contain him, because he's able to get that space, and he's able to come out of it, look for an F3 or cut back, maybe look for a weak side defenseman dropping in, whatever the case is. But I think any players that get stuck on the wall, play usually dies. So the more and more you get your players to move, let's take Bo, for instance. He's 180 pounds, but he can escape because he's got great wheels. He might get pinned for a second, but he keeps his feet moving, and he kind of chunks the puck ahead of himself, and he's able to get out of it and escape and make a play. So the quicker they get off the wall is what I'm saying. We're going to have more F3 hits. We're going to have cleaner plays to the inside, to the interior, and hopefully score more goals.
And a lot of this teaching that you've done over the years is clinics, and it's, one-offs. You're seeing these kids for a few hours on a given day, and it sticks with them or whatever. But when you're working for a team like in Columbus and like here in Chicago with the Wolves as well, you're hands-on with these guys day in and day out. Guys come, guys go, new guys come in. What's the different philosophy there as far as teaching someone that you're you're just going to be with that afternoon versus someone where you've got this ongoing relationship with and you're watching the fruits of your labor take root in them.
Yeah, I think with the kids' game, you're trying to leave them with something because they're not going to see you on that Friday. They may go with you from Monday through Friday with a hockey school, and you may never see them again. So whatever you brought to them for those 5 days, you hope they can take it on to their next team, their next coaches, whatever the case, and learn something from it. But I was very, very fortunate. I saw a lot of returned kids. I mean, I was very, very fortunate that my hockey schools were sold out in January, but they started in July. And I was doing 6 weeks back then, and I love that life. As far as the second part of that question, with players on a team daily, I think change is the big thing, bringing change daily to that player, making it new for them. And it's not, again, it's changing drills. The dialogue is different. The players that you're putting or surrounding that certain player with, like a Duhaime, for instance, you're putting different players with them daily. There's a lot of change, and I think change is great.
I was talking to Chris Patrick at the end of last year, and he was saying that one of the things that he appreciates that you do that has a lot of value is just skating scratches on the road on the second day of back-to-backs when, other coaches are a little burned out, maybe don't want to go to the rink or don't need to go to the rink. And that's just one of those grunt things that people don't see. And you're the perfect guy for that because I think you're that guy that's never had a bad day, and you've always got this raft of positive energy that's just emanating from you no matter how things are going with the team.
Yeah, I think it's very observant on your part to see that. I think that's where, like, for instance, one of my coaches in the past, John Tortorella, he inherited me when he became the head coach after 8 games, after Todd Richards was let go. John Tortorella walked in. Well, he had never had a skills coach before. And Torts recognized that assistants that were handling the PP, the PK, were able to do more. They were able to get their job done quicker. They were able to concentrate and focus instead of going to the rink and skating the extras. So we all have a job to do. And I think the coaching staff, or I should say, assistants throughout a coaching staff recognized that too, even in my Wolves days, that I could take an awful lot off their plate and they can focus on what they do. And Torts recognized that right away, and Torts and I became very, very close as far as working together. And I was accepted right away from Torts because it was something new for him. And I think it was new for him too, in a way where he didn't have to oversee things. He knew that it was handled. That's the way I think Torts liked it.
And he speaks reverently of you, and you obviously speak reverently of him. And he's obviously got a reputation for being irascible and stuff, but he's really a pretty warm-hearted guy. What would you say to people who maybe don't have the understanding of who he is as a human being?
Yeah, you have to be behind the scenes. I was 6 years with Torts. Never call him John because he doesn't want to be called John. I would love to write a book about him. My last game with him was in April of 4 years ago. 5 years ago. And we all knew he was going to resign. And we rode the bike that morning, and I said, Torts, I'd love to write a book about you someday. And he goes, nobody's going to write a book on me. I said, Torts, I'd love to write that book. And I think 10 minutes later he goes, if anybody was going to be able to write that book, I'd want you to write that book. But no, Torts is the kind of guy who leaves something with you where you want to talk about all the things that nobody knows about. And we're not talking about where the Larry Brooks media thing, the yelling and this and that. I don't think he's very, very proud of all that stuff when he looks back on that. The John Tortorella that I know is the guy who loves kids, being around a locker room. I think he loves building a relationship with a player, which it could be very, very sour. I'm not going to say it's toxic, but it could be very sour in the beginning, and then they become friends for life just by working through it. He's also the guy that loves animals, loves his dogs and taking care of dogs. And he's a big dog lover, and I think he loves animals more than humans. And then one I'd like to share that nobody knows about, how if you walk to the rink and you're on the road, he stops for every homeless person. He wants to have dialogue with them. He has food on him under his jacket. Nobody talks about that and writes about that. Or he might give them a little bit of money. And the Canadian cities, Vogues used to blow me away because the homeless people were hockey fans, and they would recognize that it was John Tortorella. And they would get up to greet Torts, but Torts would tell him, "Stay where you are." And he'd go in his jacket, and he'd have food. He'd have all sorts of food. But again, these are things that a lot of people don't know about. I don't know if Torts would want me talking about it because they are private kind of things. But at the same point, I'm proud to talk about it.
That's a sweet story. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
How did the I think it was Jarmo Kekalainen who finally recognized the value in what a guy like you could bring to an organization. So how did that start? How did the conversation start that led to you leaving Chicago? You're home for your whole life to go to Columbus and take that job.
Well, Vogues, 3 years earlier, Scott Howson was the GM. Scott Arneal was the head coach. They flew me in, interviewed me. We had lunch. I went back home to Chicago 4 hours later. The following morning, I had a job. I didn't take it. And the reason why I didn't take it, I just had something in my gut that it wasn't the right fit. And I wasn't enamored by an NHL job just for the sake of taking it, because I had all the clinics and the camps with kids, and I had the Chicago Wolves. So life was pretty good in my hometown. But I did not take it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't take it, many ways, because Scott Howson and Scott Arneal lost their jobs by January of that year. But it just something told me it's not the right fit. Then comes along Jarmo Kekalainen and Bill Zito. And how that started was, for years and years, players have flown me into their cities to prepare them for the summer. Well, Jared Bowl, who's an assistant coach in Columbus to this day, used to bring me in for like 10 Columbus Blue Jacket players. Well, I did that for years. But the 1 year I'm working with the players in Columbus is probably mid-August, and John Davidson, the president, Jarmo, and Bill Zito happened to be walking through the building. Billy Zito already knew me. He tried to get me involved in his agency for many, many years. He made those two stop to watch. They watched 1 hour. They wanted to meet with me, and they offered me a job. That's how it worked, that quickly. So, as much as I would have loved being in the National Hockey League 10 years earlier, I think my path was meant to be where I was in the American League all those years. It was almost like to cut your teeth and get your schooling in the American League. And the thing I loved about the American League was it was constantly trying to get players to the National Hockey League. I was proud of that, to be able to see a guy move on to the National Hockey League. And I felt guilty when they didn't move on. If you had a player, he's 4 years later and he hasn't gotten a chance, I felt guilty with that. But 16 years with one team, and the organization is great, as you know, the Chicago Wolves. They're almost like an NHL team, the way they're treated. I was very, very fortunate, and I had a great life there. But you can't win a Stanley Cup in the American Hockey League. And so when I finally did get that chance, and Bill Zito says, "What's it going to take for you to leave all those things in Chicago?" And I said, "Let's talk." And Jarmo Kekalainen and Bill Zito take credit for the first full-time NHL skills coach, which happened to be me, according to them.
Have you run into guys that you've coached that are now coaching as well?
I love that. And I love this too, where a player is coaching a Bantam team or a Pee Wee team, and he doesn't even know what to do to start coaching, but he just knows that he wants to be in the game of hockey. And he might say, "Kenny, do you have any of those drills that we did in the minors or whatever in the summer months?" And I do. I just know the year, and I can flip through it and see all the numbers, fire those off. But obviously, if they're pro drills, he can't use them for a squirt team. But if he's got a junior team or a D3 college team or whatever, they can be used. But I love to be able to share stuff and pass the baton and pass the torch on to up-and-coming coaches that were once players with me.
Is there a player that you could point to over the years who maybe took the biggest leap over your time?
Yeah,
I
mean, right off the top of my head, the biggest leap would be Chris Drury. Becoming president and GM. Chris flew me everywhere, or Chris came to Chicago to work with me. I got to meet Chris back in the Colorado days. I ran 7 development camps for the Avalanche back in my day, and I ran 8 or 9 for the Atlanta Thrashers, a couple for St. Louis. So I was getting my taste of NHL work, and I was recognized, just couldn't get the job, couldn't open up the door. Maybe because it wasn't even accepted back then. But yeah, I'd say Chris Drury on the highest level as far as management side. The stories I love too, Vogues, are the players that are getting my position that I once worked with and had a 10-year career in the American League or the NHL that are now within the NHL as a skills coach. And a guy that comes to mind is J.P. Vijay with Winnipeg.
I remember him when he was with the Thrashers.
Yes, yeah. and J.P. has put in the time. J.P., he kind of followed the recipe of what I did, of starting with kids. I told him that it's very, very important for you to teach at every level to be a good, solid coach, because you have to convey differently to a 6-year-old compared to a 12-year-old. But if you can convey at all the different levels, you're going to have no problem when it gets to the pros, because you're going to be the hardest way to teach is to teach kids. You're actually an educator. You're actually a teacher. So I don't like when coaches try to fast track and skip all that. But I think if you go through all the different levels, and then when you get a chance to start working with major junior players or college players or pro players, it's going to become that easier, because you're going to be able to dissect the game that much easier because of all the training that you've had.
I mean, you've been affiliated with the game your whole life, essentially, playing the game, teaching the game. You've seen a ton of evolution and change in the way the game is played, the way the game's thought, the way the game is strategized. Do you ever try to get out in front and think about what the next things are going to be and try to get ahead of the curve on evolution of hockey? I know it's a hard thing to grasp onto, but having seen sort of the evolution, are you able to pick up trends and see where the game might be going next?
Well, I think the trend in all of sport is speed. In all sport. Yeah. I mean, you can watch a football game today and hear the announcers say, this team is fast. They're fast off the line. Or a transitional basketball team is fast up the court. I think speed is where the game has changed in the game of hockey. Zach, your question's phenomenal. Zach Werenski asked me the identical question. We were ready to take the ice in Florida for a practice, and this is when I was with Columbus. He says, Kenny, where do you see the game going? And this is coming from an elite player, but he dissects the game the way I like a player to dissect the game. And there was like 6 or 7 guys waiting on their sticks, waiting for the last lap of the Zamboni. I said, Z, I believe the game is going to go within 20 years that every team will have 5 or 6 McKinnons, McDavids, or McCarrs. That's what I said with speed. They may not be able to be that player, or finish like those players, but they're all going to have the speed and be able to get that puck to the net. That's where I see it going.
And to think it and to play with pace and
yes.
to respond, react to actually, I guess, not think it.
But to be able, my thought is these players that I just mentioned, those 3 players, and you think of those players right off the top of your head, because they not only can do it with speed, but they can finish with their execution. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying these future players are going to be that elite, but I think they will be that elite with their skating game, because the resources, Vogues, are amazing today for these kids growing up. And so much of sport today is focusing on that sport by the time these kids are 10 years old. Whether you're a pitcher hurling a ball, whether you're a kid shooting a puck, or you're throwing a football, on a football field, they are using resources specifically for their sport, and they're not playing other sports, whereas I don't agree with that. I wish kids would play, an abundance of
100%.
sports to be able to just enjoy other games. I mean, I wasn't a tall guy, but I enjoyed playing basketball once in a while. Wasn't a big guy, but I enjoyed playing schoolyard football. Or in Chicago,
Same.
we had the famous
Yeah.
fast pitch. But fast pitch as a kid led into me being able to play baseball until I was a junior in high school. I loved it. And I think hockey helped my baseball. Baseball helped my hockey. So, but yeah, I think where they're solely focusing on one sport today, resource-wise, parents are pushing their kids towards that. I think that's why we're developing incredible 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds, and we're going to see more and more 18-year-olds be able to play in the NHL if that chance comes.
I mean, we're seeing it now.
Yeah, we're seeing it now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We don't have a ton of time left, but there's a couple things I definitely want to touch on, and one of them is your mind, your mechanical mind. Everybody's brain works differently, and I think the way yours works is a major part of what you do. Tell us about the rebound generator.
The rebound deflector.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I brought that very, very quickly. It was a tool that I made out of a piece of cardboard and a bottle cap because I said to myself, how can we simulate a broken play where pucks are being shot, they're hitting body parts, they're going off of ankles and being pinballed here, and how does a player react to it defensively or offensively? So I was like, how do we turn a puck into a ball?
You're manufacturing chaos.
Yes, you're manufacturing chaos. And I said, how can we do it? And I said, that puck has to be turned into a ball some way, somehow. So I thought about this device, which was a ramp, and I started going like that with a bottle cap, and I filmed it with my phone, slow motion. And I watched that bottle cap run up the cardboard, and I saw the bottle cap come off this way, this way, knuckle off of it. And I said, well, if I have no idea how it's going to come off as a coach, nor will the player. So I went to a foundry in Columbus. I had one built. It didn't work. It was $1,500 right down the drain. And then I had to practice with one in the factory, just shooting pucks in a factory to try it out. We opened it up a little bit more. It led to me bringing it on the ice. And then it's an amazing story. I brought it on the ice for 15 minutes at the end of practice. John Davidson wanted to go into business with me. Jarmo Kekalainen wanted to go into business with me, and so did John Tortorella. And I didn't take any of the three. But
Do you have a patent on it?
I do.
Good.
Yeah, I got a patent here in Washington, which I'm very, very proud of because that's a process in itself.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so incoming teams used to come in and see me using this in a morning skate. And the guy that really got it off the ground for me in my brain to start making it was Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz said to me, I want 2 of those.
I'm not surprised.
And he says, Kenny, he goes, I want to order 2 now. And I said, I've never even thought about building them. I just built one for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And that led from one thing to the other. And within 6 months, I was looking into a patent and a foundry to build them. And I still do to this day.
And you're a guy who collects sports memorabilia.
Yeah.
You've got essentially a museum.
I do.
In your home back in the Chicago suburbs. How did it start? And tell us about your process. You'll leave no stone unturned looking for new items, new old items. And I love hearing about your latest finds. And so just give us a window into that part of your psyche.
Skate collection. My skate collection is museum pieces. They're 300 to 400 years old. Purchased everywhere from Holland to Germany to the east coast of Canada, up in PEI, to the east coast with Maine and Massachusetts. I've traveled for skates, and preserving them and bringing them back to life is what one. If you're a collector, you just don't want 5 pieces. You want 25. 25's not good enough and becomes 50 and 350 or 400 pairs of old skates. But no, I look at old skates, Vogues, and I think about who made them. Let's take a pair from 1850. an American pair that was made in 1850 in Massachusetts. We're talking 10 years before the Civil War. You had to be very, very wealthy to buy a pair of nice skates in the day. It was a rich person's sport to be able to skate outside. Very, very expensive. And then you would see the maker's mark like a golf club. And I know the years because I've been collecting for so much, but I think about the person who skated in them, and I just want to keep them, circulated and not thrown out. And love to educate people on them. And I would love, I did it in the American League. I probably had a couple 100,000 people see my collection of skates with several weekends with the Chicago Wolves. I'd love to do that for Washington and bring my collection here and showcase them in a case. And you label them and you work with the PR department with all that. And I think it'd be fascinating for kids, grandfathers, whoever, to be able to see the skates. But yeah, that led into hockey sticks, obviously, in the game. I loved, a Bobby Hull like that or a Stan Mikita like that. Curved banana hook stick all the way to Ken Dryden. And my couple of my favorite sticks are probably up in my library in my house. And, to get in the library, you have to be Sidney Crosby, Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Guy Lafleur, and Alex Ovechkin has just recently gotten up there. It took a while for me to put it up there, but when O did what he did last year, which to me is the greatest thing I've ever witnessed in the game. I've not won a Stanley Cup, and I dream of that, but the closest thing I can think of winning a Stanley Cup was watching O's chase last year, getting those couple of goals in Chicago, and then leading to Long Island to beat the record, and I'll never, ever forget that. But, yeah, I've got an extensive stick collection all the way to thousands and thousands of golf clubs. So I've been a true collector of old sports memorabilia.
Last thing before we let you go, and you mentioned earlier that you turned down the Columbus job a couple of years before you took the Columbus job. So when you resigned from Columbus a couple of years ago, I got to think at that point you had a lot of teams knocking on your door. What made Washington the team that you chose, and how soon after you got here did you know that the fit was right?
Oh, it's a great question. When Jarmo Kekalainen put out a press release, I thought I was going to be out of work for at least a year. He put a press release out, which became like an agent for me. So the Washington Capitals called. I had an interview that day, and it was Spencer Carberry and Brian McClellan. The following morning came the Colorado Avalanche. Then came other teams within 2 or 3 days from there, 5 teams. I'm not going to go through them all. Mm-hmm. I got down to Colorado, and I got down to the Washington Capitals. I've always loved this city for visiting. Then I thought about the mountains. I thought about T.J. Oshie. I thought about McKinnon. I thought about John Carlson. I thought about Makar. And then the coaching staffs, I knew the coaching staff very, very well in Colorado because Jared Bednar and Prater were part of Cleveland with Columbus in the American League. I knew Joe Sakic well and Chris McFarland very, very well because he was with Columbus. That was an easy turn of the key and go in. The only people that I knew in this organization with the Capitals was Steve Richmond and Scott Allen. I wanted something new. And I was hoping that Washington would be very, very interested in me through the process. And I have to tell you, it was a very difficult call for me to make to Colorado and say no because I knew so many people. But I wanted a new start. I love this city. I love the history. I'm an Abraham Lincoln guy. I collect Abraham Lincoln pieces and books. So, and I wanted to be part of, back then, the Backies, the Oshes, the John Carlsons, the Koozies. Obviously, to be able to see that. So that all weighed into it. And most importantly, Spencer Carberry, because he seemed like he was very dialed into my position. And Brian McClellan was wanting me in a nice way because he said if I ever came available, he would want to talk. And that day came, and I didn't realize Washington wanted a guy so badly. And it comes from what you said earlier about T.J. Oshie looking for that. So it wasn't just the younger players, and you're spot on with that. It was a lot of the older players that were looking for it. Brett Leonhard was telling Brian McClellan for years, we need a guy with skills. So I think when it came available, my name popped up that I was out there with no longer after going into my 9th year with Columbus. A few teams knocked on my door, which I was very, very acceptive and receptive of in a way where, let's talk. And I ended up here.
Not surprising at all. And Mac told me that day that we got the best guy.
That's awesome.
So, and
I didn't know that.
2+ years later, I can absolutely vouch for it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Appreciate your time as always,
Thank
Kenny.
you, folks.
I love talking to you.
Same here.
Thanks to Kenny McCudden for hanging out with us today on Break the Ice.